Good evening, everyone. I hope that the video is working. I would like to thank you first for giving me the opportunity to speak today. As Ruth already mentioned, my name is Svetlana Balak, and I come to you not only as a mother, but as someone who has lived through the harsh realities of the Hague Child Abduction Convention. I want to share my story briefly about my life before leaving, the injustice I faced during the Hague proceedings, and most importantly, the devastating consequences that followed. The life before leaving was pretty difficult. Before I left my ex-husband, I was a young mother trying to raise my children in the midst of a deeply abusive marriage. Both of my children were born in Germany. I had endured 2 traumatic childbirths, ongoing instability, and a constant struggle to provide safety for myself and my children. My decision to leave was not taken lightly. It was driven by love for my children and the urgent need to protect them. When I finally found the courage to leave with my children, I hoped for safety and the chance to rebuild a stable life. Instead, I was met with the machinery of the Hague Child Abduction Convention in Ireland. My children were 1 and 3 years old at the time when the proceedings started against us in 2023. I found the proceedings to be profoundly inhumane. The court process stripped away the human context of abuse and trauma. I was portrayed as unstable and unfit, despite having pursued higher education, building resilience, and always putting my children first. The hearings were not about listening to my children or recognizing their best interests. They became an exercise in enforcing return orders, prioritizing international obligations over human lives. It was as if neither my voice nor my children's voices mattered. So what were the consequences? The consequences of losing my Hague case were devastating, both personally and for my children. So the separation from my children followed. They were taken away from me when they turned 2 and 4 years old. And the greatest pain has been the forced distance. And instead of being with me daily, they were reduced to video calls and supervised access. And even though the Hague Child Abduction Convention states that the abductor, or like the parent who abducted the children, should not be influenced negatively in any way, that was not the case in my particular case. So I am allowed to see the kids for a maximum of half an hour twice a week. I'm not allowed to speak my mother tongue nor English. I'm only allowed to speak German. And in terms of supervised access, I get to see them for 4 hours in a special room, also only in German. And yeah, it's just been a very horrible experience so far. This has already lasted for over a year. I missed out on their childhood moments, their milestones, their everyday joys. And they missed out on the stability, love, and guidance that only a mother can give. The personal toll, so these years have drained me emotionally, psychologically, and financially. I have faced endless legal battles in both Ireland and Germany, often without adequate representation. So, because I don't really belong anywhere, like in Germany, I was stigmatized as being a migrant. Often they tried to put me as only being Ukrainian so that they would try and kind of like paint a picture of me that was not actually true. Then when I got to Ireland with my children, I was also not seen as fully Irish because I wasn't born in Ireland, and neither were my children. So that was very difficult. Yeah, and as I said, the stigma of being branded unfairly by the courts has been isolating and cruel. The impact on the children, I think that is like the worst part that not a lot of courts see, because for a judge and for all the legal professionals involved in the case, it's just another working day, it's just another decision. But for me and my children, it is something that we are suffering through, and nobody knows when it will end. So, my children have grown up in a system that treated them as objects in a legal dispute rather than as human beings. Their sense of safety, security, and family was undermined. They have carried the scars of decisions that failed to prioritize their needs. as of the current um, situation, as I said, I am very limited in the types and the time of access that I have with them. And they live in Germany, which is just very far away from Ireland, and I don't get to know a lot of information. I continue to fight, but I am being discriminated by the courts, and my children grow up without knowing their cultural or language heritage and without knowing my family at all, because my family is not allowed to have any contact to them. What I would like to say is that it's just a systemic injustice, and what happened to me is not unique, unfortunately. Thousands of mothers and children worldwide suffer under the rigid application of the Hague Convention, and instead of protecting children, the system often punishes those fleeing abuse, as was in my case. It prioritizes legal obligations between states over the rights and welfare of the very children it claims to protect. And yet, despite this, I have tried to remain resilient. I completed a leadership program, pursued computing studies, and continued to fight, because even though I lost my case, I refused to lose my voice. And that is something that keeps me going, because I don't want my children to grow up in a world where the Hague Convention still exists. My story is just one of many, but it reflects a deep and urgent problem. The Hague Convention, in its current application, fails to protect the most vulnerable, who are the women and children fleeing from domestic violence all around the world. I stand here not only for myself and my children, but for all the families whose voices are silenced. We need a system that places the best interests of the children at its heart, that recognizes the realities of abuse, and that treats mothers with fairness and dignity. I lost the Hague case, but I will never stop speaking up, because justice for my children and for so many others is a fight worth continuing. So I would like to thank you, and if you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them.